What's up, you all? This is Dr. Jewel, and we are here with Your Mind Matters with my friend Laurel. Thank you for coming back again.
You're so welcome.
And chopping it up with us about mental health, mental wellness, and mental illness. And, you're a young woman, and so I want to kind of speak to issues that women face, and whether you're a woman or a man. I mean, it really is not a respect of gender, but we want to talk about you being a young woman and some of your journey with mental health and mental wellness. So on the previous episode, we just kind of talked about relationships and being hurt. Okay. And relationships ending. And all of us know that breakup, man, you were like, oh my God, you feel like you're just going to die. Okay. I just do, you go through your sadness, you ball up, woe is me. And everyone goes through that. Okay. But you talked about your journey in that your heart was hurt. As a result of that, you turned to weed. Something that in this day and age we see as just innocent, okay? Right. Just everybody has it. You can get it from anybody in your family. It's out here on these streets. Anybody knows how to get it. And so weed.
And it's legal in a lot of places now too.
So what's wrong with weed?
It's a lot easier now than when I was younger.
So, we're going to do it this heartache. We're going to get high legally, okay? In some places, And so you go through that, and then, but then you started stating that as a result of it, your heart, again, still injured, not really dealing with that injury, just kind of self-soothing, all right? And so as a result of that, you start going out to the club, kicking it, becoming a little bit sexually promiscuous, okay? Because, again, when you've been hurt, the thing that oftentimes what you do is to say, you know what, I'm beautiful, I matter, I'm all of that, and I can get anybody I want to. I can do that because look at me, I'm good enough. But the attention that you're getting may not actually be the attention that you want. You know what I mean?
And then it's also like, I can control a situation. I get to control the outcome I want. Ooh. I can be the maker of my own destiny. Watch me. You
can't hurt me.
You can't hurt me because I'm going to help. I'm going to determine what's going to hurt me, and you're not going to be the person to hurt me.
That's right.
So,
and I
won't even give you the chance to try because I'll leave and go on to the next one.
Like my cousin used to tell me, he was like, get them for you get God. I don't know what that, that was a whole lot. Get them for you get God. When I was in college, I said, whoa. So basically he was telling me, man, these guys out here, get them. And it just wasn't a nice thing, but it was like, he was like, but that was self-preservation. He was like, cause these dudes out here on these streets, they're not meaning you any good.
Right.
And so he was like, you get them. So again, you were controlling the situation because that breakup was not totally in control.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is like I was becoming really numb. I kind of had this other persona take over called like the not nice word, like the B, if you will, because she was protecting me. So like she kind of took control of where normal, nice Laurel, who is so kind-hearted, loves everyone, will do anything for anyone out of the goodness of her heart, always extend kindness, she kind of took over and was like, oh no. And so it was almost like I would have this desire to do good and to be nice, but she would override it.
Absolutely.
And that was a self-protective mechanism.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that's who I was, but that's who I was allowing to take control and to become. And that's what was presenting.
So what happened after that? Okay, so we go through this phase. So what happened? What happened next?
So that happened when I was like 18. So 18, 19, I went to college. Okay. I finally was like, my sister was like, Laurel, what are you doing with your life? You need to go to college. And I was like, okay, because I'm used to being told around and just, doing whatever. So I ended up going to ETSU in Johnson City, Tennessee, and was doing really well. And the first semester, this is what's so interesting. Remember how I mentioned earlier how I knew that I would never try harder drugs because I knew I had an addictive personality? Well, when I started the summer going into school, I was smoking every day, all day, every day. I actually was dating someone that was one of the biggest dealers in that area. And so like I had unlimited access to weed and was smoking it up. We'd have parties all the time. It was pretty wild how that happened. But anyways, and so when school began, I was like, well, I'm paying for school. I need to make good money in school. So I can't smoke weed and I can't drink. That's like non-negotiable. Okay. And when I'm determined enough and I make something up in my mind, I can adhere to it because I'm really strong-willed. And so I didn't. I was able to not smoke weed or anything. And so that's what's so interesting to me. I always found that reflecting back, like for someone who's addictive, if they want something enough, they are capable of achieving it. But, and so I was able to easily I didn't smoke weed at all. I made really good grades. Okay. My first semester did great. And then I had met someone towards the end of the semester, and then we started becoming friends. And then he really wanted to be with me. And then my 20th birthday, I agreed to officially date him. Okay. And we began a relationship, and I basically quickly ended up living with him most of the time. I mean, I was paying rent at like the house with my sister and roommates and stuff, but I was fully living with him, with him almost all the time. And it was very passionate, very intense. He was very, very attractive, dressed really nice, had a decent amount of money. But he was very abusive verbally. Like I never knew that till even later on, because I had been exposed to verbal abuse at an early age, and so for me that felt like love, that felt normal. I didn't know that was a grid for toxicity because I was used to being verbally abused my whole life, so I didn't really have a grid for that.
That was your norm.
That was my norm. Yeah. So I was like, oh, you treat me like trash, that means I need to love you harder. And that also means I need to validate you and tell you how amazing you are so that you don't feel bad about how crappy you're being. Not that he would be capable of that anyways. So
ooh, you saying a mouthful right there. Whoa.
Yeah. But anyways, so that relationship was highly sexually active. So I actually was probably addicted to sex at that point as well. So we were having an insane amount of sexual intercourse.
Sex is an addiction.
Sex is an addiction.
Oh, we don't talk about that.
And I think we tried to use it to manage our skills.
Absolutely.
And as in our problems, solve them with that, use it as a way to deal with it, use it as a way to flesh out our own emotions in our own life on both ends.
We're going to do a show on that.
Right.
That merits, you all, that merits its own show in and of itself, because a lot of people, Laurel, I'm glad you brought that up, because, as believers, as Christians, we don't want to talk about that. How we we eat it out, we sex it out, we smoke it, drug it out, we shop, we make it a little bit cuter, and we'll go buy 50 pair of shoes it out. You know what I mean? So we have different things that we do to deal with unresolved issues. So thank you for saying that. So go ahead. I just wanted to throw that out there, because we kind of
it's important to know.
The sex it out part. Yes.
It's very real.
It's real, saints, people of God. It's real. All right, go ahead, baby. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So that relationship got really intense. He had a lot of anger issues. Of course, I could never say that because, if I did, but he had just a lot of, he was really young, but really brought up from a way different culture. And it was very harsh and controlling and abusive, really degrading to women specifically. And so I was exposed to a lot that I had no correlation, that I was just like, what am I doing wrong? And so with that relationship, I actually ended up getting 3 weeks pregnant, and I just woke up one day and I just had this knowing. I was like, I think I'm pregnant. And I went and told him. He was like, oh, you're probably trying to trap me. He forced me to come spend the night. We bought pregnancy tests, and it was really traumatic because he even had to watch me to even make sure I wouldn't tamper with it. So there was just zero trust, whatever. I had no autonomy of my own brain or body. at all. And then he was like, we're taking care of this mess. And for me, I always have wanted to be a mom. I think every life matters. And for me personally, like that was something I never wanted to do for myself, and I never agreed with. I never thought that was okay, and I always wanted a child, and to feel and know there's a life inside me, to be right about that, and then be told, like, forced to be told that this isn't a choice you get to make. It's already been made for you. I've made the appointment. We have to drive outside of town to go get this taken care of. I have to pay $800 for a mess that's probably not even mine. And then there also he had just recently gotten some stuff out of storage from the other state he lived in to his new dwelling place, our home. And one of the things he got was a gun. And I must have done something that made him so upset. And he had the gun out, and he was like, it was very much pointed at me. And I was like, look, I love you. Like, just put it down. It's okay. Like, and again, to be able to remain so calm and feel no fear and feel no danger, that's a huge misfire for someone who has mental illness. You are not allowed to feel the consequential or danger signals in your body. Like that, even now, I'm only able through therapy to really make that mind-body association, like literally recently, 10 years later, because the trauma, you just deal with what's there. And I'm like, okay, I love you, put it down. He puts it down, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I love you more than anything. I don't know what would happen if that happened, but then still treating me horribly. And so we go to the clinic, and we're there, and I did get to see the sonogram. It was in the gestation period, so it was 3 little dots. But I remember he was there for that, but then you have to go watch a video that, like, to show the procedure or whatever. And I remember being in this big conference room, and it's just me and this little portable DVD player, and I close it because I didn't want to watch, and I just cried, and I was like, God, if there was any way that I had a choice, that I would keep this child. And I love this child, and like, I love you, and like, I literally have no choice, or he's gonna kill me, or kill whoever, like, it just, whoever he thinks it is or whatever. Like, it's just, I literally, if there was any other way right now, like, please let it be possible. But like, I just knew that it wasn't. And so then years later, the kindness of the Lord, he told me, he was like, Laurel, you did deliver that baby. Like, when you were there, you delivered her to me. I believe it was a girl. No one really knows, but in my heart, I like to think that it was a girl. And so my child would be 10 years old. So I would be a mother to a 10-year-old, and so for years, Mother's Day, no one would think about that, right?
Whoa.
But for someone like me, when that's the biggest traumatic thing for me that caused my mental breakdown, Mother's Day was devastating for me. Anytime someone would just even say Happy Mother's Day, I didn't have the language or the understanding or the emotional intelligence or even to know the depth. I used to not be able to talk about the abortion or anything without like crying or feeling shame or whatever. I've been fortunate enough to get the type of support and counseling and trauma therapy that I need to be able to share, but never just like underestimate how that affects someone, whether they had one, didn't, miscarriage, pregnancies, all of those things. There are people that want to get pregnant that can't get pregnant, people, infertility. You never know someone's journey. So I think anytime, especially in this day in society with mothers in general, just be sensitive, like
compassionate.
We are. Don't tell people, oh, you're young, you can get pregnant.
Oh,
or,
my goodness,
it's like you never know. They might not want to get pregnant for a reason, and you just never know. So just be really cautious and considerate about that. And so, and so after the abortion, I had a mental breakdown. I can't really tell you about it because I don't really remember. I was not in my right mind. What I do know is that I think I like got a hold of some medicine somewhere. We went on a trip to like St. Louis, and like I took someone else's medication, and I was smoking weed. They think we got weed that was laced because we had been out in Atlanta and didn't get it from our regular dealer. And so we think we just needed it quick for the weekend. they're pretty sure I got weed that was laced, which is another thing, like drugs and different things can be laced with chemicals.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I had whatever I took for the abortion. I didn't have like an actual procedure. I just took like pills since it was just 3 weeks.
Right.
And so whatever pills I was taking, the aftercare pills, I thought I was taking my nausea medicine, but I was taking something else. Or instead of taking the pain medicine, I was only taking the nausea medicine. So like there was chemically, I was feeling all kinds of things in my body and my heart and my head and my brain. I was smoking weed that was laced. Being with someone who hates me even more than ever now, but claims to love me, is on the verge of being physically abusive. I can't tell anyone what happened, so I'm isolated from my family. They know stuff is going on. My family was actually calling and saying, we want Laurel to get a Oh, I also didn't have a phone. This is interesting. My phone had broken. My mom didn't bring this up till a few years later. No one could access me except for through him.
Wow.
And I didn't realize this till now. I could have got a phone. It's like $20 for a track phone back then. It was like way back in the day, you know. He never even got me a phone. He had the money
your
to,
mind, girl.
you know. So he literally he knew what he was doing. So I remember my mom calling him. We were getting ready to go down to Florida, and they were literally like, "We want Laurel to get a psychiatric evaluation." We were like very concerned for her, and I was like, "Screw them! They think I'm crazy.
Right.
Like I'm not crazy. I'm just living my life.
Right.
Like they're crazy. You know, like so defensive. Clearly not in my right mind.
That's right.
But he was just trying to control everything. He wanted complete control of my finances. He literally had me thinking that I was incapable of making my own decisions. Whoa. You know, he would say things like, you can't even function without me. Like, you're so worthless. Like, you're this, and this, and that. And like, how do you even think you can make a decision? You can't even do this right. Like, you know, those are the really kind things he said. I will not share the others. But 98% of what he said was really abusers try to negate who you are. Any light and hope and love and kindness they have, they try to squash it out so that they can keep you low, so they can control you, so that your light and love is only received from them.
That is correct. Did you hear that? I thank you for bringing that up, because some of you are trying to figure out, you know, is this relationship that I'm in? I think it's love, but it sounds a lot like what you just said. My boyfriend, my girlfriend, because it's not always dudes. It can be girls too, okay?
100%.
Absolutely. And so it can be all types of relationships, all right? So, you know, but the control, like you said, the goal is to keep you low and to keep you dependent. And so, so you don't even realize who you are, whose you are.
Yeah.
You know, you live in a state of I'm less than.
Right.
They continuously devalue you. Everything you do, they challenge, they devalue it. Then they try to isolate you so no one else can tell you that you're valuable, you're meaningful, you count, you're worthy. Exactly. All right. And so that's what they do until people are like, can't nobody do that to me, honey? Live long. Anybody can, because depending on where you are mentally, emotionally, the trauma in your life, your past, and then this was laced with drugs too, baby. So you know you entering substance into it too, substances. So you never say. This is one thing, Laurel, that I want to say. Never say what you will never do, because you just never know. Okay, it could be you. And when you say I never would, you shame people that have had those things happen in their lives, and no one is immune to anything. Okay.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, so I just want to share that, because some people may be like, man, I went through that. They may feel condemned right now, or they're in a relationship and they're like, this is not healthy.
It could happen to anyone. And it's so subtle. Like, it's so subtle. And it happens at a flip of a switch, because they'll love bomb you in the beginning. They will make you feel like love bomb.
Oh, did you hear that?
Yeah,
like
they'll love bomb you like you're the best. Because I wasn't determined to be his girlfriend. He had to convince me, and I even used to tell him, it was my 20th birthday when I finally agreed, but I've known him since I'd been at school.
Right.
We had been friends. And then I was like, I guess, but I used to tell him, and again, it's like, depends on what state you're at, which what you said. I was broken.
Yeah.
I was emotional and available. And I used to tell him, I wish you knew me before my relationship. I promise I was a good person. I wish you knew me when I was kind. I wish you knew me when I could care. I wish you knew me. I do I do love you.
Yeah.
But this is all I can offer.
That's all I got.
That's all I got. And so he already had me at a deficiency, accepted that, but then squashed that even more. Ooh. So it's like so interesting to look back and reflect now, because I can actually extend kindness and compassion to my younger self and like view it in a different way. But it took years to even be able to even acknowledge, one, that he was evil, and two, that it was only
he was broken.
It was only 2 years ago that I was able to even say anything bad about him. Because here's what I want to say. She touched on the people that can feel shamed. For those that have been in abusive relationships, it's so important to know that, like, for us, not all of it was bad. A lot of it was good that we experienced, because we create this reality to focus in on the good so that we don't have to look at the bad, because that's how we survive.
That's right.
That's how we cope with it every day.
That's right. That's how you make it make sense.
Right. And the love that we experienced, they were broken people and they were loving us the way they knew how. And I think that's valid for the abusers too, is like, abuse is wrong, but they're still broken people.
Absolutely.
I thought I had forgiven all my abusers, and I thought I had forgiven the man that took the choice away for me to take my child away. But I didn't realize I hadn't forgiven him for taking that choice away. I had forgiven the actions. I had forgiven the event, but I was really with the Lord, and I was like, oh my gosh, I released this person. And I forgive them for the fact that they took the choice away from me to choose to have my child. And when I fully forgave them, it was like this different. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. It frees you. It frees you. And so now I can talk about that experience without the trauma tied to it, and also bring freedom and hope for other people.
But it was layers to it.
But it was layers, and it was layers. And so be aware of people's journeys, where they're at. You may want them to be there. I remember so many people like, it shouldn't affect you. Loving people in my family. Oh, it's just an abortion. It doesn't matter.
Right.
People have abortions all the time.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, they do. But like, that was really real for me. And like, that really, still to this day, sometimes I cry about it,
Absolutely. Like, well, you can have another child.
I would have a 10-year-old child right now. I love kids. I love children.
Absolutely.
And especially at the, I've been single for 6 years intentionally, because I wanted to heal through all the trauma, so I don't carry that into a marriage, and really work through that. And I'm now at the point in the past 2 years where I was finally ready to be open to the idea of marriage and family.
I love it.
I've always believed in that promise for my life. Yeah. Like I fully believe that, but I wasn't there yet.
Well, tell me this. Okay. I want to ask you this. So how did you finding out you have bipolar disorder? How did that enter into, after the, after the abortion?
Yes.
All right. And again.
So my family telling me they wanted me to get a psych evaluation, me saying no. What actually happened is I did a bunch of things I really have no recollection of. Okay. And I actually ended up coming back from a trip, and the day we came back, I got arrested. Mm-hmm. So I ended up getting arrested, and I went to jail, and I was in jail, and I was like, Lord, what's going on? I was semi-normal, like kind of, just dealing, but still no idea what was really going on. And then I got really sick in jail, and they actually put me in an isolation cell to monitor my health. And when I was in that isolation cell, I started detoxing from the weed that was laced, and I went full on crazy. So much so that they had to transfer me to a psych hospital. And so when I was in the psych hospital, they didn't know what was wrong with me. They didn't know if I was schizophrenic, because I was like superpower strength, like crazy, seeing things, hearing things, like not in my right mind, like just all the things that could happen, I was experiencing. And so they didn't know what was going on with me. So they'd put me on all these heavy psych drugs, like Thorazine, like all the things I've been on, like, cause they just didn't know what was going on. And then I was there long enough that they were finally able to get me stable enough to determine and assess. And then they said, we believe that she has bipolar 1. So at 20 years old, I was in college, had my whole life ahead of me, beautiful, young, thriving, went to in a psych hospital, down to 90 pounds, drooling, looking like a zombie, unrecognizable to my parents, and just had an abortion. Not in a relationship, and just went to jail. So now there's potentially something on my record, someone who's never been in trouble with the law before. And from there, I was court ordered to go to rehab. Because my family, like I said, I have an amazing family, super supportive. Not everyone has that. I know how blessed I am. So they advocated hardcore for me. And I was able to go to a rehab actually here in Tennessee, down in Columbia, a Christ-based facility that's amazing. And so I went there. After rehab, I was there, still not fully there in my brain, still a little kooky. But after that, I was able to go live with a family that agreed to take me in to help me through transition coming out of rehab. And from there, I was in my right mind again, but probably the most depressed I had experienced. I was constantly reminded of what normal looked like and that I was not. And that my life wasn't normal. I was severely tired, very depressed, could barely, I also had...
Could you bathe?
Yes, I could. I could bathe. I could bathe. Sleeping, not so much, or oversleeping. Oversleeping. I also contracted hypothyroid because of the medicine that I had been on. So I went from I was a 00 my whole life. I was a 00 my whole life, and then I ended up getting a little bigger, and I thought that was crazy. And so then I also was dealing with body image issues, and my whole identity I didn't realize had been wrapped up in being so skinny my whole life, because people would always comment on it. So then coming to terms with that, and I felt like the most ugliest, unlovable, broken, worthless person ever. And even if people tell me they loved me, I believed it, but I didn't love myself.
Absolutely. That says everything. And you just really identified bipolar 1 disorder, to a T. Usually, with bipolar disorder, it is a mental illness, okay? And it is, we identify it by mania. And mania is some of the things that you actually experienced that you didn't know was actual mania. Oftentimes you get a grandiose idea of who you are. You start making irrational decisions. Some people sex binge, drug binge, steal. It's so many things that can happen under mania, and it looks different for different people. Okay, I have some people will go in the store and buy 1,000 action figures. Some people will go buy all the things off of the shelf for different things. They'll spend excessively. They'll do things recklessly. They'll become extremely irritable, and it'll last for 7 days. Okay, up to 7 days, and oftentimes they crash. They end up in a hospital because the behavior is so erratic, irrational, that we're trying to get a grip. You'll hear things. I mean, anything can happen, if you're in a psychosis. And so many things can happen. And so you end up in a hospital trying to figure out what is going on here. Why aren't you sleeping? Why are you staying up for days and not tired? What does this look like? So again, that is an experience, and then drugs on top of it. So it was a whole lot that was there. Having a co-occurring
disorder, I think most people don't realize, like, with co-occurring disorders, anyone can have a mental illness dormant, but it can be triggered through drug or traumatic events. And so we're all pre-exposed to having some form of mental illness, but it may not become present unless there's a traumatic trigger in life.
Right.
And that's why it's important, whether you have one or not, to learn the coping skills and to learn early warning signs and to just be as knowledgeable as you can. You don't need to know like in depth about everything, but at least have a general understanding, even so you can just be kind and supportive of people like me or others who have been through things.
That's right.
So you're not like being detrimental to their own healing journey, you know, in your own ignorance. Just educate yourself. It's important. Listen to her podcast, like listen to other things, other tools. There's enough talk and knowledge and tools around. It's worth looking into so that you can at least be educated enough to know and support.
Absolutely. And that is so important. That is so important. And so, you know, like I said, your journey through, and you said a lot there, which is very important, that I could have an underlying mental illness. One thing that I asked you before, you know, you want to look at your family. You want to say, okay, is there anybody in your family that has mental illness? Because Uncle Billy, though, you know, that's just, we accept that's the way Uncle Billy is. Uncle Billy may not be healthy, okay? He may have substance use disorder. Every time you come up in the crib, he is either on alcohol, smoking weed, you know it. I mean, that's just what Uncle Billy does. But the thing is that he could have a substance use disorder which could be a result of something else that happened in his life that he is self-soothing for. It's a whole lot of layers on this, but you said that. So take a look at that. You know, if they're using drugs, why? Okay. Yes. Everybody that uses drugs. Come on, why? Like, what are you trying to get rid of? Like, what are you trying to get why? Hello. The big question. So if your kids out here like, Mom, all the time, what is going on? Just trying to get, no, I'm just like the way it feels. What is actually going on? Yeah, and just being very gentle, kind, and compassionate about that. Baby, are you okay? Like, tell me, you know, you're self-suit. Like, what's going on? I just like weed the way it feels. Now, some people, they do. They just like, man, this is just it, okay? But again, not overlooking some other things that could be happening, that it could be some trauma. Then another thing, too, that you said, okay, this is funny, but I'm just going to throw it out here. All weed ain't the same, okay? Let's just deal with it. I'm not saying, hey, yeah, look. People do. It's weed is. Laurel, I'm just trying to keep it real.
I mean, there's a reason why there's mid-grade and then there's high-grade and then there's sour diesel. Like, there's all kinds of levels and qualities and calibers of weed. So
it's the same as alcohol. You got 100 proof, 80 proof, 20 proof. You understand? You got proofs in liquor. I'm trying to make an analogy here. Yes. It may not be working, but I'm just saying that all things are not the dosages of medicines not the same. And I'm telling you, dealing with weed is unregulated. You may get some stuff in that weed that you don't know. Next thing you know, something within you, an underlying mental illness could be triggered because of that one hit. Next thing you know, things that were dormant that really didn't manifest itself as far as symptoms, or it may have been mild, may all of a sudden become very, very present. You feel me? And then
and I was fortunate enough to get the help I needed. But like, it's miraculous that God was able to heal my mind, because cognitively, for most of my early 20s, I probably had the mentality of a 16-year-old. Oh. It really deterred me, and it is a miracle that the Lord was able to restore what he did cognitively through CBT therapy and other things, and even just like, you know, having awareness and to be able to work through those things. Most people don't do that.
That's right.
Or they're able to.
Or don't have the resources.
So literally, like, I mean, when I say I lost my mind, it was a couple times I did, because like we talked about with the manic episode. So after I had been depressed, you know what I decided to do one day? What? Oh, I'm going to go to the hookah bar with this guy. Left the house, went on a 4-day spree in Nashville. Don't remember all of it. I remember I was on a boat at one point. How did I get there? I don't know. Like, literally, it's crazy. So I went on a 4-day spree. My family is trying to hunt me down, see where I'm at, if I'm okay, if I'm alive. Totally manic. So then I went to another hospital, and I stayed at the hospital. And then I met someone at that hospital, and then I left that hospital and go and lived with them. And then I went somewhere else. And I cycled through years of 2 years sobriety, then manic episode. Bam. 2 years sobriety, then hospitalization. So it is, it's so important too that when someone is fully recovered, you don't expect them to stay fully recovered.
Oh, they can look, remission and exacerbation.
Thank you.
Remission and exacerbations, and that thing may stay cool. They may be fine. Oh, and let's throw it out here, Laurel, medication.
Yes,
come on.
Yes. Oh, well, okay, yes.
Let's talk about it because the Saints don't want to talk about that.
Because here's the thing. I had to be on medication, and I still am on medication.
Come on.
Because there is a chemical imbalance in my body, and I need it. Will I always need it? No. Sometimes I need less a dose than others. Sometimes I need some medication. Sometimes I don't. But I know what works for me. What I will say, and this is so important, the reason I decided to go to that hookah bar is because someone in the church told me that God could heal me and I don't need medicine. So what did I do? I got off my medicine. I didn't tell anyone. I stopped taking it. I started feeling better. Because guess what happened? The mania started creeping back in. So I think I'm doing better. I think I'm feeling normal. Don't tell anyone. I go on a manic spree and then I'm full-blown manic. Full-blown off meds and in crisis again.
And the things that you do, when we tell people, come on, let's stay right here, Laurel, because we got to, this is serious right here. When we tell people, by faith, get off of your medicines and things like that. See, the thing that messes with me is that you don't say by faith, get off of my insulin, by faith, get off of my thyroid,
right.
By faith, get off of my chemo, by faith. See, I mean, there are a lot of things, it's double standard. And when it comes to mental health and mental wellness, mental illness, we'll tell people to come off of their medicine. We're real quick to say that. But what happens? Let me just throw this out here. When you tell a person who has bipolar disorder or depression to come off of their medicine and they go manic, see, you don't know how their mania is going to hit. Their mania could get them a prison sentence for 20 years. You know why? Because they are not in their right mind and they do stuff irresponsible, irrational. It's not because they're a bad person, because the chemicals in their brain are off. So their judgment is off. They can get out here going a drug binge. Next thing you know, they end up dead. Because again, you may have said, come off of your medicine because you can do it. Look, I'm just saying to you, be careful. We have to be compassionate.
So careful.
Be sensitive of what you say to people because their life, the trajectory of the experiences that they go through, not only did they take themselves through, but your family has to go through this. Rehabs are expensive, baby. I'm just telling you. I used to work with one. $2,000 a day. You hear me? It all depends on all rehabs aren't equal either. So again, having to go through rehab, taking the money, the finances to have to deal with that, the expunging off a record so they can get a good job.
That's actually what was so interesting with me is I had to get my record expunged through judicial diversion. I had a pending felony because I think I forged like 2 checks when I was manic initially. I literally have no recollection of doing it. And so what happened is my family was advocating for me. I'd never been in trouble with the law or anything. And so there's something called judicial diversion where it's if it's your first offense, they're willing to expunge it off your record. Well, because I relapsed that time, that pinpointed my expungement. So then I had my license taken away. So I couldn't drive and I couldn't get a job because if I worked, my thing wasn't clear. So I was on disability and I couldn't so that also kept me in the cycle of recovery of not getting better because I couldn't progress forward. It hindered me from being able to live my life and progress forward as an adult. And so it stunted my growth. It stunted me becoming an adult. And then I was in day programs and group homes and stuff because what else could I do? But also I needed help. I needed to learn life skills. I needed to learn how to cope with my things. So yes, there was a lot I was able to learn about illness management recovery. IMR, it's a wonderful tool that helps teach you what are your early warning signs to learn about your mental illness. I don't take those days for granted, but half the people that are in there don't care. But I did until I started using again, and then I did it, so it's flexes through. It's a cyclical cycle.
That's right.
But I will say this. I looked at my life on September 17th, 2017, and I said, look at everything weed has caused me. It's not weed itself that's bad. it can be a great tool. It really can for those who, I know someone close in my own family that had back issues, and they used weed to deal with that, to not have to take painkillers. And when that wasn't accessible, they got on painkillers, and it was really bad, and they had to use other drugs, and they ended up taking their own life. And that was so sad to see happen. But if they would have been able to legally and medically use marijuana for the benefits that they needed, they might still be here. So I'm not saying that weed in itself is bad, but what I am saying is that it caused mental illness for me to be triggered. It only exasperated my emotions in a way that wasn't helpful. It made my conception of what's good and what's right, or what's wrong, and what's going to serve me well, what's safe, what's not. It altered that for me. It altered that for me and put me in really bad situations. I mentioned before, like, I was hanging out with a gang in Nashville. I thought they were just a motorcycle club, and literally, that was another experience that was very traumatic on a 4-day spree, passed from place to place, person to person, not having any correlation what's going on. Manic. By the grace of God, I got out and they dropped me off. And the whole time, didn't know this till later, we're just friends. They're like, oh yeah, this girl's so crazy, we're gonna take her back. Like, literally, because that's how crazy you can be when you're manic. When you're manic. They're like, we actually don't even want to deal with this. You know what I mean? That's like, I mean, literally, manic. Like, I could have been sex trafficked for the rest of my life. Like, that's the severity of the situation. The reality that I look at now, I'm like, how on earth did I get out of that? So it's just, so I looked at what weed had cost me, and more than anything, I had years of sobriety and different things. And like I mentioned before, I can leave it or I can take it. Right. But what it was is I wanted stability more than anything. I wanted to be able to see my brother. I wanted to be able to be around my mom and all those things. And so I wanted stability in my life. And in order to achieve that, I had to have sobriety. Love it. And that's really what brought me to where I am today. Almost 7 years sober, completely stable, hospital free, fully redeemed, and all because of the goodness of God in my life.
That was a mouthful, but wow, so many nuggets in that. Look, you all, I hope you heard something that resonated with you, okay? Again, whether it's you, whether it's someone in your family, whether you're dealing with it actively right now, whether you have a family member that you didn't understand them, but they were actually manic, whether or not they're on drugs and the drugs are kind of, causing that mental illness to come into full fruition, whatever it is. Look, it merits a discussion. It merits compassion. It merits prayer. It merits you getting professional help. I'm going to say it again. It merits getting professional help, because you may not know all of the intricacies. See, if you go to a professional, a mental health professional, they can tease through all of this and say, honey, that's just mania. And you're like, what is that? Okay. And so again, we can help you to understand the dynamics of mental illness, because we're just starting to really talk about this and coming out front with this. So it's okay if you don't know, but guess what? Don't stay that way. Get with a mental health provider. If you see some of these things going on, you're like, whoa, I was wondering. Okay, please get some help. We want to help you. And you can always hit us up at dr.jewel@gmail.com, and we can kind of guide you to where you may need to go. So look, I hope this is helpful. Look, Laurel, thank you so much for coming back for part 2 as we dealt with your testimony. And we are so grateful for the journey, the 7 years of sobriety, the great things that God is doing in and through your lives. And man, the best is yet to come. And so I want you to come back, because you're about to get a degree. You're about to be a massage therapist who has a special calling. And so we want to talk about the importance of massage and different therapies, different therapeutic modalities outside of